Okay. Let me just.
All right, so I'm JP Rindfleisch, and I'm with Fiona Chan, and we are going over some edits. So, Fiona, before we start, do you mind letting me in on what your writing journey has been so far?
Long and slow. That's how I would describe it. Because this is my first manuscript. I actually back 15. So I wrote one chapter, and I did write kind of two or three chapters, but it's one main chapter, and then I stopped, and I didn't pick it up until I don't know, was it 2019 or something, 2018? 2018, 2019. So I wrote one chapter and it was like 3 or 4 years later before I picked it up without never been trained as never attended any courses and didn't know anything about craft. I was just a reader. I like reading and
Hmm.
also like writing. Never had any formal training, never had any courses. So I just wrote. And then once I started actually being serious about getting it published, that's when I tried to attend some courses, try to meet some other writers, try to join a critique group, for example. That's when I started to realize, oh, actually, I don't know anything. I don't know anything about structure. Like I didn't know anything about like for example, inciting incident. It just so by chance, instinctively, there was like
Hmm.
the inciting incident and all the growing complexity and conflict, just instinctively. But I didn't have it in my mind to do it. And so
Right.
I just realized that I really don't know much about story structure or, you know, like like stakes and all that sort of thing. And so I'm
Yeah.
still actually trying to learn it and try to incorporate into my writing in this story. So that's
Yeah.
my journey
Well,
so far.
I do have to say the stuff that you provided was excellent. I enjoyed it. So, don't panic. You've got the idea or the structure behind it. So, I think you're good there. But I'm curious, what sort of feeling or what do you want to get out of the end of this sort of 1 hour editing conversation, so I can make sure I hit those points?
I like to know where I'm weak at and what I'm strong at
Okay.
because
Okay.
like most of this story, I mean, I did just a few months ago hire a development editor.
Hmm.
Um, but before her, pretty much no one has read as much as she has.
Hmm.
And so after I got her review back, that's when I realized, oh, there's really quite a lot of problems with the plot and the characters. So after her feedback, I did go back to revise it. So what you're seeing now is already a better version um, of what, say, even 3 months ago. So even having said that, I still like someone to point out what I'm actually weak at, so I know where I can improve, or what
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
good at. So then maybe I can, just have some awareness of where my strengths and weaknesses are.
Cool. Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
I hope to do that for you. I'm about to share screen. This will be like the first time that you see this. Don't panic. What I like to do is
Okay.
highlight as much as possible and kind of give suggestions along the way. So
Mhm.
don't panic. But I will share my
Okay.
screen and we can dive right in.
Okay.
Let me do this. All right. So you sent me chapter 8 and then chapter 10, and this is a Asian inspired queer love story. Is that correct? Did I miss any key points there?
No, that's sums it up. That sums it up.
Okay, perfect. I'm gonna start off with this is after I had read it, I left this comment. And because I have the story hypothesis, which is kind of what I draw out of, and it lets me know what the prominent needs are of a story. Now, I only got chapter 8 and then part of chapter 10, but I can clearly tell, as it being a love story, affection is a major need of your story. It's either going to be something that is developed along the way or something that the characters get at the end. And that really is just going to determine on what kind of story you want to tell. Um, don't panic. I'll talk about that in a second. But the other big need that I see in these two bits is the protection need. Your character that we sort of sit on the shoulder of is Yiren, and we see this protection, this need to make sure that Ai is safe and that Ai is healthy, and oftentimes Yuden catches Ai, and so I really see this drive for Yuden to protect Ai as much as possible. And so I don't know if those two resonate with you, but I'm just curious, as a preliminary assumption, what are your thoughts there?
Well, I think Ewan cares about I. So he obviously wants to protect I, but he's naturally someone who will protect
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, I mean, it's probably there's also affection and care, but I think he's naturally someone who would actually help people or to protect
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Um, but obviously, Ewan cares about I and
Yeah.
does want to, is very aware of his sort of his welfare and his feelings or his emotions, like just conscious of the other person's state, state of
Yeah.
mind and emotional state. So it should
I
be in this part I
yeah.
sent you.
Yeah. And I'm curious, at the end of this entire story, do these two get together, or do they get together somewhere earlier on in the story and then it's sort of like something big happens at the end of the story? Or like what's the progression of this sort of secret interest in each other? Where does that end up?
Well, in the end, the intention is that they do end up together, but it's
Mm-hmm.
possible they may not.
Okay. Okay.
So I mean, I do have an ending that they do get together. That's the idea. But it's
Mm-hmm.
once I get to it, once I finish revising, it's possible they might not. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and this will be something that you can think about as a overarching thread, but to me that suggests that affection will probably be that big final need that these two get. But that's something to worry about in a big manuscript overview. But for me, what that does is that sort of puts in place uh how characters interact in like this chapter 8, which is probably somewhere in the early half of the book. Is that about where this is roughly? Like how many chapters or do you have?
Up to 60,
Okay, yeah, yeah. So
maybe
but yeah,
up to 60, because yeah, 50 to 60, maybe 50 to 60, up maximum 60 maybe.
okay,
So this would be almost one quarter of the way, but not quite there.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's just a thought for
yeah.
another time, but it definitely puts me kind of like where we are in the story and kind of like the progression of these needs. And now diving right into the text and sort of the big takeaway that I think could help you uh with this writing is focusing on what some people call showing versus telling, but I prefer to call it more of like this expansion because I think that that's a little bit clearer in what I'm suggesting in these cases. So right off the bat, we have this line approaching the door. Yuden moves to knock when a warning booms in his mind. Um, Having this sort of contracted sentence, uh, it quickly tells us, the reader, what Urine is doing. Whereas if we were to expand it a little bit and we were to say something along the lines of, Yurden pauses, his hand readying to knock on the door as a faint voice echoes in his mind. We're there just a little bit longer. We sort of sit on the shoulder a little bit longer, and we get to be shown what is happening. We're being shown that Yurden pauses, that he readies his hand. And so that's sort of the difference between showing versus telling, is this sort of being in the moment a little more. Um, and there are a lot more examples later on to kind of highlight these. And feel free to stop me at any time when we go through this. I know we're on a little bit of a delay, but yeah, you're welcome to hop in whenever. Um, Here I have he's about to turn, and this comes off again a little bit more of a telling sort of sentence. So instead, maybe he lowers his hand, knowing he shouldn't be there. As he steps back to leave, the door bursts open. So there's a lot of this like push and pull and expansion in this sentence that gives us space to really exist in the moment. Um, and I don't know if that makes a ton of sense, but I'm hoping it's coming across.
Oh no, because I think one of my drafts, I did actually have the hand pauses at the door, about ready to knock. It was something similar. I did have that in mind. I did probably had that in a draft. So this is
Hmm.
also, but this is also one problem that I have sometimes when writing, is that uh, I'm not able to decide what's a better sentence or what's a better way of telling the story. And so, like for
Yeah.
you, like what you said, I thought about it, but then I ended up back to this. But it's okay. I can go back to like door, the hand near the door. Pauses at the
Yeah. Yeah.
door, about to knock.
And
Yeah,
really, I think
yeah. This is something about
especially
my writing. Yeah.
uh, here in this moment, like one of the reasons why I would expand on this was actually this resonating thought where you have no in your place, and you're almost, by expanding around that and having these moments of hesitation and these moments of pausing at the door and expanding these sentences, you're putting weight back into this resonating thought because you're putting us in the moment just a little bit longer, so you're really focusing in on that. So instead of
Mhm.
moving to knock without a warning, we're kind of just quickly getting through this motion here. By spending just a little bit more time here, we put resonation and a little bit strength in this memory, this idea that booms in his mind. So whenever you have a moment where you're writing and you think like this is something that the character would put weight on, whether it's a important thought or whether it's a moment we'll see later where there's sort of like a brushing of hands together. Like we want to sit in those moments just a little bit longer because those are good moments
Mm.
for the reader to really feel in present and in that moment. Whereas like if a character needs to walk down the hallway, we can just quickly we can just have them go out down the hallway. We can quick state whatever we need to there, but there's no like weight around those moments.
Mm.
Um,
No, that makes sense.
Good, good. Okay, so then we have again, these are just suggestions at this point if you ever want to like continue to expand, all thoughts are forgotten versus all thoughts slip from his mind. It's just another option of how to expand it if you would like. Um, and then here, another reason why I would expand here is because we have in this very early scene for chapter 8, we have him moving to knock at a door, knowing his place. He's sort of like, I shouldn't be here. He needs to turn away. The door bursts open, and then we get to see I is there in an inner robe, looking thinner. His hair is down, but like these are things that hit urine. There's some things that he needs to like see maybe a little bit longer. And so we would suggest maybe like I stands in front of him, wearing his inner robe, which hangs much looser than urine remembers. I's hair drapes down at his sides. His neck and wrists are tightly bandaged, and the pungent healing ointment wafts from the room. But by sitting in those moments just a little bit longer with those descriptions, we kind of have that moment, that resonance two things happening very quickly of his hesitation and then being like, oh, I need to be here. Um,
Also, after the Zoom, is it possible that I get your notes, or is it just only now
yeah,
that I see it?
absolutely. Yeah, no, I will send
Okay.
this to you right
I
afterwards.
don't
You'll
have
have
to write
access
this
to all
write
this.
this all down. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't worry about any of that. Yeah, we're just gonna go through this for now, and if you have any questions later, of course, feel free to reach out to me. Um, but moving on to this next thing, in this paragraph, and I'm sort of taking time here because I want you to sort of think about as we move forward. This is how I would approach editing, and this is how I would approach kind of this expansion. So hopefully you can use this mindset if we don't reach any of the later stuff. But here in this chapter, or this paragraph, I'm sorry, we have it's really from Yurin's perspective, and he's visually seeing I, and then we have a statement here of Yurin being dusty and disheveled. And I I'm curious if maybe we move this to after I states, why are you so scruffy these days? That we can sort of shift that and we can have it so that the statement of Yurin's looks are based off of what I says. It's sort of like a reaction and then a action afterwards. So we're really sitting in I's perspective. He's going to knock at this door. He sees this other man, and then as he's sort of processing what just happened, I breaks the moment to be like, "Why are you so scruffy these days?" And then we have Urine reaching for his face, and he's feeling at the scruff, and then he says, "Comes naturally." So the potential to move that just a little bit later just adds to I's statement here.
Yes, I
Um,
agree.
Here was a portion for pacing. And this is something to think about as you're reading along, or maybe even as you listen to, like, if you do text to speech or anything. But I made no changes to word count, but I feel like when you state here, the dirt roads that wind through the six towns are dustiest during the dry spring months, unlike the capital, whose roads are clean and paved, as opposed to nothing like the clean paved roads of the capital. There's sort of a pacing to that. And so when you go
Mm.
through editing um, and you think about like where your comma placements are or anything like that, that impacts pacing. And so this here, I was just curious if you needed to increase pacing for any reason, this could be one option to highlight later. Um,
No, that sounds better what you suggested.
And then we have another moment here where Urine wobbles and then he goes to fall, and we quickly or I'm sorry, that I wobbles and goes to fall, and we have that Urine catches him. But adding more texture to this, jumping forward, catching him, bringing him back inside as he kicks the door shut behind him. By expanding that with some more actions, we get visual representation here. So instead of you just stating him catching him, we get a little bit more in that moment, especially because uh, in those moments where some like people that we potentially care about uh, go to fall, we kind of time slows a little bit, things happen a little bit more. So that's another option to kind of expand in that moment. Um, Here, we're currently in a moment where Yin is concerned over I, and after catching him. And I wonder if these descriptions that you state here, which are great, I wonder if they should come later. And the reason behind that is we when moments like this happen and we have someone that we potentially care about slipping up and we need to make sure that they're okay. We might not be looking out the window to talk about like the tranquility of the water. We're probably more focused on getting them to bed and making sure they're okay and they're not in pain. And then as that focal point of like care and concern fades away, then we can start to kind of expand in that scene and fill in the rest of the pieces. But it's like those moments of high tension in real life where people
Mm.
really focus in on small details, and then as like their anxiety starts to alleviate, they start to see the bigger picture around them, and like the world doesn't feel so shrunken down. Um, and so I don't have an answer to where this could go other than potentially when we go into the healing moment. Um, but I would consider potentially moving this until we know that I is safe and that he's back down, um, if that makes sense.
So yeah, no, I agree with what you said. Um, yeah, okay. No, because I was going to ask where I was trying to think where I can add it, but it's
Yeah,
I'll think on I'll think on.
it definitely fits in this area. Maybe with just a little bit of rewording, but like it's once I is safe, and especially you have Eden here plopping down at the chair in the bedside, and you can think like as someone is able to relax in a chair, maybe that's the moment that he can be like, oh, okay, and then he can fill in some of the bits of the room because he's no longer worried about, I got to put you down. You got to make sure that you're safe and back in a bed. And so yeah, it could go as soon as maybe like a couple sentences later, or when he goes to do some of the healing work. And you have here, um, as he goes to use his mana and heal him, um, is this something that is partly revealed? Because you have a statement here that he revealed this at some point, um, and
Yeah,
that it's like
pass.
a super secret thing. Is it something that starts to like take over physically when that happens?
Um, into sort of like a darkness or a shadow. So
Okay.
that's his ability. But it's
Hmm.
not something that he obviously likes to tell people or anyone. So
Right.
basically, in this magic system in this world is that you have like basically three stages of cultivation of mana.
Hmm.
And so the third stage, which is the last stage, the most advanced stage, is that you can actually transform yourself. But
Okay.
obviously, that's a gift that's unique to everyone. And so
Yeah.
what
Okay.
happened was when he was trying to save I, because obviously I was injured and because he was attacked in the previous chapter, he actually showed his he used his full powers to save him, and that kind of
Hmm.
revealed it to the captain. And so that means he's kind of like this captain knows this. I mean, it's not a secret. It's just not something you just that people know or should know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Um.
And the only reason I
But
sort of bring it up here is just because I didn't know um if this was something that would start to take over, or something that would start to form, but it sounds like it's sort of like a stage, and he's in an early stage of using some form of energy. But that's just something to think about if you ever need to add visual representation and whatnot. Um, but yeah, here, um, we start to get into a little bit of the dialogue, and we have I asking simply, where are you going? Um, but we know through the rest of the dialogue that I wants him to stay a little bit longer. He doesn't want to be alone. So there are ways to add some texture to this depending on the personality behind I. It could be a simple wait, where are you going? Or it could be if he's, maybe a little bit more and this was the one thing I didn't know is like where the like social status is of I versus Yurden, but like where do you think you're going, as like a sort of playful but yet more socially higher ranking person might ask. And so these are ways that you could play with such a simple question as where are you going in different ways based off of I's personality. Um, do either of those resonate with how you view I?
well, there's I is actually noble, so
Hmm.
he is status wise and authority wise is actually higher than Yuren.
Yeah.
Um, but he kind of looks up to Yuren, so even though he's actually by birth and by social status on a much higher level, he doesn't necessarily see himself as higher than Euron, or at least,
Yeah.
he likes him or idolizes Euron. So, and also in this story, I is not necessarily an overly, how do I say it? Like when he comes to Euron, he's not as sure of himself. So maybe with
Mm-hmm.
everyone else, he's the
Mm-hmm.
typical. He is the noble. He's comfortable, confident, poised. But when it comes to Euron, then he's a little bit more shy and more nervous.
Yeah.
So his dialogue with Euron should be kind of more gentler or a little bit more
Yeah.
insecure than his dialogue with other people.
Yeah. And so it
Um,
might be
so
this
he
sort of
treats
like,
Euron differently. Yeah.
yeah, like this vulnerable, um, almost like a
Yeah. Yeah.
yearning, sort of like a need for a presence around him, and in some sense or another. Um,
Yeah.
and in
Because
that
in
case,
this
maybe
story,
it is. Oh, go ahead.
oh no, because in this story, and this is one reason why I couldn't decide for sure at the end whether they do get together, but I do believe they will. I actually likes or loves Euron more than you, because in my original ideas, actually, Euron actually kind of cares about him and likes him, but not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily as a lover. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
I does actually want Euron or yearn for Euron as a lover.
Yeah.
So part of the story maybe is that Euron grows in affection or grows in love for I or accepts I. So I
Yeah.
haven't quite decided that arc yet.
And
Yeah.
I can see that developing. Um, I can see really this focus of like emotional vulnerability versus like duty, like responsibility, and those two things fighting inside of Yurin, and him having these internal, like, yeah, I should be with I. Yeah, I do love him. But this like external responsibility that weighs heavy on him. He's a protector. He can't just be this lover for I. He has a duty that he needs to do. And he almost needs to shed that over time and become this vulnerable person who opens up. And he finds himself doing that with I. And so that's maybe how you could progress this sort of story, is that you offer these moments where he has this vulnerability, if that's the direction you want to go with these two.
That will be close to it, if not. Yeah, they'll be very close to it, yeah. But that
Yeah.
probably won't happen. Like the story would be like Euron has to decide, what he wants to do in the future. So
Yeah.
he would actually have these kind of, I guess, inner inner struggles to try to,
Mm-hmm.
or opposing desires, I guess.
Yeah.
Because also I mean, I don't know if it's relevant to mention it, but his desire actually is to go home. So he's actually planning to leave. So one of the reasons why he doesn't want to be so close to I is that he's planning to leave anyway, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like going back to him because he's from a far away place.
Yeah.
So that's not in this part of the manuscript, but it is in the story.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I'm curious, is that he wants to do that, or is that he feels compelled by duty to do that?
to go home.
Yeah.
Um, he wants to go home,
Okay.
which is
Yeah.
actually very far from him. So he's actually planning to leave. And so that's also one of the reasons why he doesn't want to sort of be attached to I because he's
Right.
planning to
Right.
leave. But also one of the reasons why they separated, because this is about them meeting again after 7 years apart.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so because I's a noble, comes from a noble family, I's parents were the ones who actually separated them,
Yeah.
sent Euron away. Um,
Okay.
so that's where that know your place. That's actually what I's father or mother said to him, know your place. And
Right.
so
Okay. Okay.
that just gives you more context around wear
Yeah.
that know your place. That's not him telling himself. That's actually his parents
Okay.
telling him and telling
Okay.
him to
Yeah, no,
go,
that makes sense
leave.
now.
Don't
Yeah.
don't 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 be friends with our son. And
Yeah.
so when they meet again, but I doesn't know this. I doesn't know that his parents sent Yurin away because Yurin never told him. He just
Mm-hmm.
they just sent him away, and he did leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so by
Okay.
chance, 7 years later, they meet again. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of dialogue, then what I do see is this sort of like grasping that I is trying to do in it, like he's trying to pull urine in, and urine kind of having this shield in front of him with a butt that breaks down every once in a while because he cares about I. And so like ways to play around with that in this specific scenario is to, maybe toss in a wait. Where are you going? That sort of like, I'm not ready for you to leave, wait sort of sentence. And so by
Okay. Yeah.
adding something like that, it's sort of like this yearn that I has. And then here, um, it could become, no, stay just for a little bit, or you could stay for a little bit longer, but have this sort of like offering of, or you could stay, and it's sort of like if you do stay, like that would be great, like you could do this, or sort of not necessarily command as much as a plea, like no, stay just for a little bit. Um, both and yours as well. Like they're all just different ways of saying the same thing, but it's all dependent on what this sort of character might say in this situation. Um, and then here, as another example, when he goes to say, or when Yurin then goes to say, like maybe for a short time, if he's short about it, he could say fine, but only for a little bit. Like I'll give you this moment, but I do need to go do this other stuff. Or, okay, I will, but for a short time. A little bit softer. Um, but you can see that there's just a little bit of difference in the dialogue. Um, and I would think about, and I have a character voice sheet here that we can head over to as well in a little bit. But I would think about like what are the characteristics of their voice, because this is how you can hone in on it, is just by these little tiny word choices and differences in the way that they speak, that might add to it. And then here, this is when you go to mention like someone's emotional face. So like eyes bewildered response, or like he looked surprised. There are always potentials that you could add these into actions instead. This would be really resonant. A lot of people would call this telling. Um, and so instead, it could be maybe an action, sitting forward, chokes on something like a water or something that they go to drink on, but like something that makes them bewildered as opposed to just stating it. It's really a choice there. I'm not going to tell you you have to do it one way or another, but that's just one thing I wanted to point out there. And then again, as you state, like he becomes serious again, turning this into an action, maybe making this expanded a little more. He leans forward in his seat, his chuckle fading as he steeples his fingers on his chin, like he goes to, I need to be serious for a minute, sort of action instead. Because then we dive into some very specifics about like, I need some news from you. We can't have a happy moment. I need some news from you. um, and then here again, just another opportunity to potentially turn this into an action. Um, I'm gonna move just a little bit faster because a lot of these are gonna become a little bit repetitive. But I'll have all the notes here so we can kind of hop into them. But again here, the change is a welcome distraction. Maybe instead it's Yurin smiles and pushes himself up off the chair, scooping a spoonful of kanji and popping it into his mouth. It's still warm, but bland on his tongue. Um, Adding in just a little bit with the action instead of the statement here, just sort of pulls away from this telling aspect. Um, this is one moment where I learned this later after reading the next scene, but we have um Yurin getting up and he's gonna go to the kitchen and he's going to make the kanji better, and then he's going to bring it back to I. That's ultimately what these next steps are. But I didn't catch that here, and I'm curious if there's maybe a way to indicate it. Maybe and maybe he takes the bowl with him and he says like I'll be right back. Um or
Oh, yeah.
something along those lines to indicate like what he's doing. Because I thought originally that he was just leaving like and he wasn't going to come back. Um and then
Oh, yeah.
because I don't know how kanji is made off the bat. I also thought here he was just grabbing plums from a kitchen. So
No, he was
it's
going to
just
grab plums. So he doesn't
yeah,
take the congee. So the congee's in the room. He just
right.
went
Right.
to the kitchen to grab some ingredients to add to the
Right.
congee to make it taste better. So,
Right. And so
but no, I get your point.
yeah, and maybe what he does is he you could do it with him leaving the bowl in there. Like it doesn't matter if he takes a bowl or not, but you could do it where he maybe eyes the bowl and he's like, I'll be right back, something like that. And then he goes and he
Mm.
leaves and then he does these actions, but a sort of indication that whatever he's about to do is probably because of how bland this kanji is.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
And then here, wrinkling his nose at an unpleasant smell. Could you be maybe a little more specific here? Is it like the fresh cut fish assaults the senses, or
Oh,
whatever the
yeah, yeah,
specific smell is? That way we
yeah.
kind of get in the moment by knowing, is it pungent? Is it acrid? It just helps us be a little aware. Um, we also have the cook startling, and I'm curious with this cook, what does that look like? Does she nearly drop her knife? Does she jump and turn around? But that's just another way to kind of add a little bit of texture to this moment. um, and then also it's a very short moment. We're very quickly introduced to this cook who is more or less just a character that is present to give him some plums. Probably, maybe never see her again.
Yeah,
But
that's right. It's
there
NPC.
is, yeah, NPC.
It's
But
like
there
it's
is
the
opportunity
equivalent of
to
an
give.
NPC. Yeah.
Perfect. But there's an opportunity here to give a little bit of life. Does she point with her knife? Which you do, and that's a great start. But maybe she's been startled by urine, and there seems to be like some sort of relax, as if his societal position allows for this informality, especially because she's pointing with a knife, which I don't know if that's normal what you would do around certain people or not. But it's almost as if she goes constable, sorry, I can't even words. Constable, she says, turning back to her catfish. He goes to ask if she has any plums, and maybe she doesn't reply, at least not right away. Then she points with her knife and she says, they're over there, but don't be taking a lot. She needs them for something. But that could be a
Oh,
way
yeah,
to
yeah.
add a little bit of like
Oh,
how
yeah.
she views him. Um,
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's a good point.
and then here, he has a flashback where he's made kanji for I, and then we get this like and this is great. It's a really short, quick kind of flashback to give some information. Um, where he's made kanji before. I didn't like it, and then he took time and effort, care, into making kanji that I would like. So it's funny because again, you're showing me very quickly that Urine really cares for I, and even though externally he might be driven by duty and responsibility, it's clear to me that like he loves him in a way that will hopefully open up and will develop into something more. So this was like a great quick moment of that. A couple of notes is you could potentially say, with a bowl of freshly made kanji, so that you kind of trigger that this was something that was made relatively soon. Because as we go to these quick moments, it could be I grimacing as he takes the spoonful and then saying, "Oh, what is this?" This is you have these kind of reversed, where I is responding, and then making a face afterwards. And if you reverse this to I grimacing after one spoonful and going, oh, what is this? Um, that kind of flows better with dialogue, if that makes sense. Um,
Mm.
and then here is where I think you can really dive into the urine being the one who made it. So you have here medicine for treating your cold, maybe adding in something like you don't like it. I followed the recipe. Um, I eyes the bowl, picking up a spoonful and letting it plop back in the bowl. Come on, it will make you feel better, Urine says. The 17-year-old boy took a few more gulps before handing the bowl back. I can't. It's awful. Urine eyed the bowl, then dipping his pinky into a mixture and tasting it. Maybe I'll try a few more of something. I'll get it right, just you wait. And then we go into next few days, he's experimenting with the ingredients, and that way we kind of hop back out of this flashback. But just a little bit more in this moment sort of gives the interplay between the two and the fact that we can see that Urine is really dedicated to making this perfect for I. Um, okay. And then here, I want to see the moment where I taste it and verbally appreciates it, uh, because you kind of put weight on this with these previous scenes. You have an intent here for Urine to get the better ingredients to make it. Sorry, I just thought of a funny commercial. But regardless, you have him doing all this, and then we get I receiving the bowl, beams with delight. And as a reader, I want to be in that moment. Urine just took effort to go make a good bowl for him. And so, I want to see that moment where he gets that bowl back and he tastes some and maybe he nods. He's like, this is better. Or maybe he says something here, but just a little bit longer where we actually get to be in the moment where Aaron hands the bowl over and he actually, we watch him eat it in one sense. And this could be 2 sentences max. It could be a little bit longer if you wanted it to be. It doesn't have to be very long, but instead of these sorts of quick, receiving the bowl, beaming with delight, we kind of get a little more in there. Here, we have, I think this is the last like really big thing that isn't really repeated much else later, but we have these moments where we have a lot of information of like what's happening with the Capitol, where people have been, but it's not in quotes. And it's more of like a quick turn to the reader to quick tell them some information, and this is somehow conveyed to each other. It might be verbatim this, it might not, but I'm curious how Yurin might actually say this to I, and how if I cares about it or if he's interested in it. Would he sit up in bed? Maybe after, Yurin stiffens and relaxes again, and he says, well, after leaving the capital, I went and visited the master in Dorgal. I sits up in his bed and he's like, really, I didn't know you went there. And he's like, oh, by chance, lady was also there, kind of having this interplay between the two. What is I interested in, or does I have questions about this? And that allows for showing if I is interested in this as information. And some of it may need to be cut, some of it might need to be expanded on or changed a little bit depending on what kind of questions I might ask. But it allows for a little bit of interplay while we get some information. This here, I believe, was a memory because we
Yes.
have characters that weren't there a moment
Yeah.
before.
So
I
this flows on from that other part where,
okay.
he left the capital and then he went to visit his master at the temple. So
Mm-hmm.
this was about 7 years ago. So they've obviously just
Okay.
caught up again after 7 years. And so this is
Yeah.
just telling I, or,
Yeah.
I actually is interested and ask him, but maybe the way I've written it doesn't show that clear enough. So this is
I
basically
think
then
so.
talking about what's happened, you know, during the past 7 years. How did you
Yeah.
come here? How did you become a constable? So it's
Yeah.
possible in my early drafts I did actually have that interplay a bit more. But again, it's one of those things when I'm writing is that I might have it and then I can't decide whether it's good or not,
Yeah.
or I change it to kind of more of a telling,
Yeah.
more like a
Uh,
summary, and that's how it's ended up like
yeah.
this.
And I think here what happens is we have we as the reader or the observer, we're still in the room with Yurin and I. And this moment here, just before I goes to ask a question, is is sort of just a statement. It's not really something that's
Mm.
said. It's just information that's being conveyed to the reader. We're not put anywhere, and it's not being verbally said. It's exposition, more or less. Um, a way to do this
Oh,
would
yeah.
be for him to say this out loud, and then for I to interject and maybe speak a little bit in here to kind of break it up. It's not super long. It's for exposition, this is pretty short. But then what happens is I interjects and
Yeah.
interjects in this moment where we're still in the room. And then what happens is we're suddenly somewhere else and there's no indication of that. And so that's how I got I was like, I don't know I didn't know there were people in the room. And I was like, no, this is the flashback. Like I caught on, but I think what could happen instead is we just have Urine saying some of these things, so you volunteered instead, well, um, did he volunteer? I'm trying to read this really quick to make sure, but
No, he didn't.
regardless,
His master pushed
yeah,
him. His master
yeah,
pushed him
yeah.
out all of a sudden. That's what
Yeah,
I'm
so
trying to
then
say is that,
instead
yeah,
he could
his
say
master
that
just
he
pushed
could,
him out. Yeah.
yeah. So we have I here. So you volunteered instead? No, or hell no, or absolutely not.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Master pushed me out and made me do this and blah blah blah. And then maybe I starts laughing and they can
Oh,
have
yeah.
a quick moment of levity. But we as the reader sitting on the shoulder of Urine as this conversation has happened, we've always been in just the room between them. And I think that this probably makes more sense to sit in that room and really interplay, because more or less this whole chapter and the next one that you sent is really about the interplay between I and Urine, as Urine, talks about maybe some of the past. But yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, no, I think when I was in my original draft, it was more of a dialogue.
Mm,
But I think sometimes I write too much dialogue, so I try to take away the dialogue and made it more like like
story.
an exposition. Yeah. So
Yeah,
these
yeah,
are this is are things like I struggle with my writing where I'm not really sure what's the best way of telling the story.
yeah,
But no,
yeah.
the
Okay,
original writing was, I think, was dialogue. Yeah.
okay. Um, I'm gonna go through these kind of quickly. I'm just looking at these. These are pretty much all just suggestions here, and we can talk about those in a little bit. Um, More suggestions here. Oh, here. This is some dialogue where we have Urine. This is in chapter 10. Urine is looking at some blades, um, and I appears in these robes, looks immaculate, and Urine is staring at him. Like
Hmm.
he's just full on staring at him, and then this wind kind of pulls him back, and he panics a little bit because he's like, oh, I was totally zoned out staring at you. So is he one that might stumble over his words if he's caught in a moment where he knows that maybe someone knew he was gazing at him, or was gazing at I, and maybe he would say like, can you give these to Urine, or something along those lines. Um, Bigger question here is Urine saying this, or is I
Yes,
saying
because
this?
because in my story they don't use the first person. They don't refer to themselves as
Okay,
I. So
okay,
that's one of the speech patterns of the story is that they refer to themselves by name. So if I was to say, um, are we can you give this to me? I wouldn't say me. I would say, can you give this
Yeah.
to Fiona?
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm
Okay.
referring to myself as with my name. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
just the
Okay.
speech style. Yeah, in
Yeah.
this
As long as
story, in
that's
this world.
a common thing in your story,
Yeah,
then yeah, there's no worry there. I
yeah.
was just like, wait a minute, but yeah, no, that makes sense. Um, Another sitting in this moment just a little longer. Um, Here, we have this like offering to go for a walk, maybe a ride. And then we have urine being like, are you sure you're well enough for a ride? And instead of this quick yes, I wonder if it's maybe like, yes, I'll be fine. Some fresh air will do me good. A lot of like this reassurance that I has to convey um to 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 urine in order to make him feel like, I'm not a burden. Like, don't worry about me. I'm capable of riding. Like, don't panic. I'm fine. Um, Trying to alleviate urine in any way. Um, and I'm curious if urine would respond to that. He comes off as some type of a protector. So maybe he would say something like, fine, but if I catch you wavering on your horse, you're riding double with me on the way back. Something that's like, you know what, fine, we'll go on this walk, or we'll go on this ride. I don't think you're well enough, but you're going to argue that you're fine enough to walk. But if I catch you wavering, I'm going to take control of the situation and I'm going to, like, I'm going to put you right here and we're going to go back because I'm not going to have you falling off your horse. That kind of conversation. Um, and that sort of plays into the romancy-esque of it. There's like, obviously he's doing it as a form of like protection, but yet there's still some sort of play between the two. Um, just a little bit more showing here and here. Um, Here, uh, this is just a thought between what the ride is. I know I wanted to go for the ride. Does Yura know where they're going? Um, is that something that I might hold back, sort of playfully? Um, and that could be a way that you would include a little bit more dialogue. Um, if I's like, I have a place in mind and we're gonna go here, and he's taking that protective aspect of urine away in this scene because now urine doesn't know where they're going. Like urine's the person that likes to be in charge, but if I is in charge and I is like, no, we're gonna go for
Oops,
a
you're
ride and
frozen.
I'm gonna take
Oh,
us
you're
this way.
frozen.
Yeah.
I
I'm sorry,
missed
what
a
was
little
that?
bit there because there was
Oh,
you've missed it. I missed a little bit because there was a lag there on my end. Um, but actually, this is Yiren taking I to some place
okay.
because
Okay.
I doesn't know this place. He just happened to he was passing through. So Yiren's the constable of this place of
Yeah.
this
Okay. Okay.
province, which is the six towns. And so I was actually passing through, and that's how they met again. Or was actually,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was attacked, and so obviously Ewan saves him. So maybe I can make that clear is that Ewan has a place in mind,
Yeah, yeah. I
a
think
beautiful
up
place in
here
to take. Yeah,
where we have like the how about a ride and then like maybe we have I asking, well, where are we going? And Aaron's like, well,
yeah,
you know, I'll
yeah.
show you when we get there, something like that. But um yeah, I definitely think that something interplayed between there, regardless of if it's I not knowing where they're going or you're in not knowing, but in this case it would be I. And sort of that dialogue between the two, as they're riding along, I think that's an opportunity to add in a little bit more dialogue, especially when they ride side by side through farms and village. Like that's a perfect time for some commentary. Maybe asking how much longer, because of course I will probably be the one who will be like, how long is this gonna take? Like when are we gonna stop? Um,
No, I'm not sure because uh, yeah, that doesn't seem like I's personality.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah,
That was a little bit like
yeah,
over exaggerated, but maybe it's something along the lines of like, do you know where we're going? Or just like curiosity as opposed to like maybe like childish, but this sort of like not the unknown being something that they want to be aware of because probably as a noble they're told everything like where they're intended to go and all of this information. And if that's being withheld, that might be something to play with. If that's something that
mm,
urine does.
I, yeah. I just felt like they would enjoy just the ride side by
Yeah.
side without talking, because
Yeah.
that's how I. Oh, they might talk a little bit, but I just felt the feeling of just being together. Because they're
Yeah.
on a horse, so they wouldn't really. I don't know if they'll be talking. So like, two horses, I don't know if they'll. Maybe they could talk, but I felt like they would just enjoy the ride and the scenery and might not talk that much. So that's
Yeah.
how I imagine it, um,
Okay.
without that much conversation in that yeah in that setting, because
Yeah.
they've already done their
That
talking
totally
with.
works. It totally
Yeah.
works. Yeah. The only thing is it's a suggestion if you wanted to add more dialogue. But yeah, definitely totally your choice. Um I think here that's just a little bit with the dialogue play. Um Here we have something about what I is doing makes urine pause. Maybe it's seeing sweat or a pale face, something that indicates like maybe he's not feeling as good as he's implying, so let's make a stop. But as opposed to just saying like something about it makes it go like what is the something? Just adding
Mhm.
that in there. Um Oh, here, this was an option to expand on this. So Urine's concerned and he says, let's rest by the creek. Depending on how he wants to say this to I, and if he knows that I might um push it, might be like, no, we can keep going, like, doesn't want to be a burden. Maybe he diverts the conversation, come on, let's rest by the creek. I'm feeling a bit peckish anyway. He's probably lying, but he's implying that like
Oh yeah.
if we stop, it could be because of me. Like I'm fine with taking on that because I'm more concerned about you. And if you were going to push up against this, I'll just say I'm a little hungry, so let's stop. But that's a way to kind of expand and what you're doing is you're putting that like concerned protector voice back into urine. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, cool. Um, just more dialogue here. Yeah, okay. So take a look through that document. And I'm also gonna quick hop over here to this character voice. But I need to move this based off of the information you sent. I pulled up some information and you can play with this. And why you would play with this is to see how characters talk and based off of who they're with and what sorts of word choices they would have, what sort of body language they'd have, like their cadence, and then their pacing, how they talk. Um, this is something that I've done with Jeff before, and I've done it once, and then I never looked at it again. But what it did was it helped me figure out like how a character could exist in a situation and talk differently. And so when looking at urine and sort of picking apart the information I had, um, I felt like he had this fear of being vulnerable, that he's protective, especially with or of I, and that he might struggle with this emotion versus duty, which a lot of that sort of came up during our conversation, in some form of another. Um, Personality wise, seems like this protective, caring person. Um, has a sense of humor with some of the things he says, but there's a lot of restraint that is involved with his personality. Um, Generally, a calm and composed person. Uh, when talking with I, he seemed very straightforward, but definitely caring and gentle with the word choices that he made. He was attentive, very protective, and sort of tender in the way that he spoke. And that cadence comes through with this sort of like soft and thoughtful. He had a little bit more pauses when he talked with I because he was probably picking the right words to choose. This might be because of the time that was spent apart from each other. It might be because he doesn't want to like he wants to make sure that he's coming off in the right way. It's not something that's like it's more of a subconscious thing probably for him at this moment. But what that means is there's more potential for these pauses. So he might uh, have an action that he does first, and then he might speak. As opposed to someone who might not be thoughtful of the way that they speak. How you would see that in dialogue is, how is everybody doing? JP says as he walks into a room. I'm speaking first and I'm just, then I'm walking into a room or whatever. In Yurin's case, maybe Yurin walks into a room and he looks around. How is everybody doing? He's taking care of the way that he speaks. He's doing an action first, and so like that's how you can play with cadence, based off of different characters. In terms of like pacing, with it's very measured. He'll take time to ensure that the other person is comfortable. And the difference, um, when talking with the cook, even though it was really short, it seemed very direct. He was less about the caring and comfort, but still very straightforward. Same personality. It's just talking to someone that maybe he doesn't have like a lot of feelings towards. It's a cook, doesn't know him that well. A little bit more assertive and purposeful and very businesslike. Very efficient, few words, not really interested in having long conversations with the cook, more about like, I need to get things done. Still the very same person, but talks to people a little bit differently based off of situations. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes.
Okay. Um, and then with I is pretty much only with Urine in these scenes. We have some like notes of him obviously being physically injured, dizzy, also vulnerable, but more in the sense of like gentle and vulnerable. I mean, injured, more or less. But has a lot of gratitude, especially towards Urine, and very curious and wanting something, is missing something, more than likely companionship. And so using that sort of like, I need companionship with Urine. Very soft spoken and doesn't like making requests, which is really interesting, especially because him being a noble, and this might only be with Urine, but doesn't want to be a burden on Urine. So he like restrains himself from making certain requests of him. And how this looks in the way that he talks is he chooses words that are focused on gratitude, thankful. But there's also a level of like surprise and curiosity in the way that he chooses his words. He's very like, tell me more. I want to learn more about your life. I want to learn more about like the things that you did outside. Body language, a lot of leaning. That might have been some of the notes that I had, but like not only ailment, maybe needing to lean against something because of sickness or needing of this relief, but also like interest, leaning forward or leaning as a form of body language to kind of draw in the conversation. Cadence wise, slower, especially being ill. Um, More likely to have dialogue tag first. So similar in some form or another with Urine. And there's occasional hesitation, mostly due to like uncertain moments. So if there's a moment where I doesn't have an answer for it, or maybe is worried about something, might be more hesitation as opposed to a general steady pace of talk. So those are the notes I have. I don't know how correct they are based off of the rest of the story, but this is something you can play with if you want to look at variations in how characters talk in your story, like their choices in dialogue. That make sense?
Sounds good. No, it's yeah, yeah. I mean, and I'm glad I'm a bit surprised you got so much out of it, the how you're able to see the characters, because that's pretty very close, or pretty much it how I do want the characters to be. So that, I mean,
Good.
but you've managed to actually pick up on it just on the, half of 2 chapters.
Well, that's
So
good.
that's
That means the
I'm
characters are
glad that
represented
that
well.
comes through,
Well, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah. Thank you for
All right.
this. I really enjoyed it,
Yeah.
and it's been very helpful. I hope you enjoyed
Yeah.
reading it. Yeah,
I did.
yeah,
I did. I'm gonna
yeah.
end
So
the
glad. Yeah.
recording there. So let me stop the recording.